So it's Steve from Ukraine, Doncaster, and today we're interviewing Kate, a refugee from Ukraine, and the topic of discussion is a Ukrainian in Doncaster. So first of all, Kate, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Right, as you just said, I'm a refugee. I think it defines me now perfectly well because when I meet new people here in England, right, I always I don't fail to mention that because they always ask me, "Oh, what's your accent? Where are you from?" So I think it's become part of my identity, Ukrainian identity. And well, I'm just staying here in England, and I've been here for over 6 months so far, and I'm really enjoying it. Apart from that, I'm an English teacher. So this is my specialty. So I enjoy teaching English. That's why I think, it's enabled me to also do an interview with you and have a lot of discussions with other people in England too. But yeah, I have an array of hobbies. I do love art and photography and English, of course. So yeah, and I love talking to people.
Great. So can you give us tell us a bit about your circumstances of how you came to England and also
Oh
why
yeah.
Doncaster?
All right. So I remember the day when I actually I registered on that website. I think it was called Homes for Ukraine, and then you could choose your options. So you could choose what city or town you'd like to go. But actually, it was like a little warning as well. Don't we advise you not to do it because it might prolong the process as well. So because I was quite scared, it was quite frightened because I am from Sumy originally. So I mean, I'm from Sumy originally, from Chernihiv, but I've been living in Sumy for quite a long time now, and it was pretty close. It is pretty close to Russia. So I didn't have time to think, okay, maybe I would like to go to London or Leeds or other beautiful places of England. So I didn't choose any options, any particular reasons as well. I didn't have any particular reasons to go to any of these cities. So I think, yeah, I was happy with any city, for example. So for example, Doncaster or Bracewell, either big or small, it didn't really matter to me just because I'm a huge English lover, and I'm a huge fan of the country as well. So it didn't really matter. I knew that I would be happy nonetheless.
Okay, that's great. So let me ask you a few questions about Ukraine, because obviously, being a Ukrainian myself, born in England, we always like to know how Ukrainians from Ukraine think and what their opinions and views are. Obviously, any answer you give is not like an opinion poll that reflects the whole country, but it's just nice to know, from individuals like yourself. So my first question is, for those people that don't know, Ukraine became independent in 1991. Okay, and a country, usually the identity of a country is defined by its language. So you would think that everybody in Ukraine would be speaking Ukrainian, and yet a lot of them speak Russian. So can you explain that?
Yes. I mean, I can't really explain that, but I can just throw more light on the situation. Yeah, and it's just good to say that it's safe to say that I'm not imposing any views as well. So I think that as a Ukrainian, I believe that there should be one language in Ukraine. But also, we understand, and other Ukrainians understand that it might not be quite possible, now, to choose one language and start speaking it, because we all know that a lot of people in Ukraine have been under Russian propaganda, and they were born speaking Russian. Or also, I wasn't born speaking Russian, but as a Ukrainian, I was really surrounded by Russian. It was in the news, in the media, and it was just around you. So as many Ukrainians, we didn't have to learn the language as such. So we didn't have to sit, at the table and learn different words. That's why I think a lot of people now, they justify that by saying that I was born Russian speaking, and I can't really change that now. And because they were born also, another reason why they were born in parts of Ukraine, cities of Ukraine that were close to Russia. And I think some of them didn't have a lot of Ukrainian schools as well. That's why they didn't even get the chance to learn and really fall in love in the Ukrainian language, whereas I actually did fall in love, and I was surrounded by Ukrainian, and I think also both Ukrainian and Russian. Because my school was like all my disciplines were in Ukrainian, we didn't have any problems with that. So we could just like be fluent, in both languages. For now, I think it's really hard to say who should be speaking Ukrainian and who shouldn't be speaking Ukrainian. But my ideal version, perfect version of Ukraine would be Ukrainian speakers only. But realistically, I understand that it's like 50-50. It's not really possible for now, or it might take some time to get there. But I honestly, I can't really explain why. I just know that there has been this country, our neighbor Russia, and it has had its policy where they want like to be. Oh, they think that we are part of them, I think, and they think that our government is just like another sort of regime, or it's just that government that is kind of evil to them. Honestly, I don't know what they really think as well. It's just what I've heard as well, because we don't really know Russians' agenda for real. But yeah, I think it's hard to say. For me, it's hard to say.
Right. Let me just tell you something from my point of view. From my point of view, and this again is just my personal opinion. If there are Ukrainian soldiers who can only speak Russian and they're fighting for and defending Ukraine, we must support them 100%. Okay. My only concern is obviously friendly fire, because you get that. But other than that, yeah, the time will come, things will change. So another hot topic for discussion for you. You said that Ukraine obviously borders Russia, we know that, and there's lots of Russians living in Ukraine. Do you have any friends or relatives that are Russian, and how has the war affected your relationship with them?
So personally, I don't have any friends or relatives from Russia in my family. I know that some distant relatives in my family were Russian, but I'm not sure if that's kind of true. So my mom mentioned once something about one relative very distant, but again, I never saw this person. I never kind of knew this person as well. Speaking of my husband's family, so they have some close relatives who live in Russia, but they are not Russian. They are Ukrainian, and I don't think that it kind of changed their relationship as much, just because this person, this relative, she came to Ukraine a few times as well. I think even before the war, obviously, and then after 2014. I've seen her personally. I've spoken to them face to face, and they were quite all right. So, but we didn't speak about politics. But because she's Ukrainian, she doesn't have all that, and her vision of Ukraine is the same as of Ukrainians. But I don't really know what her husband thinks and what their relationship is, just because it's so intimate, right? I don't know really. But I know that for many Ukrainians, and we know some even popular people, famous people here in Ukraine, whose relatives, they refused to keep in touch with them, because we're trying to reassure them, oh, now they will come and they will change everything because you're in trouble. So they were kind of sure that we were in some kind of trouble here, But in my experience and in my bubble, right, circle of friends, these people haven't got many friends or relatives that live or are from Russia.
Okay, so then another hot topic is obviously we've just recently had the second anniversary of the invasion, but most of us know that the invasion really started in 2014 when the Russians invaded Crimea. Some people have talked about land for peace. What are your personal feelings? Would you give up Crimea or Donbass for peace, or would you, like some people say, well, look, so many people have died, fighting for Ukraine, that we need to have the whole of Ukraine. What are your feelings about that?
There are so many opposing opinions on this. But yeah, I think that again, if I knew, if I was in the know, let's say, as some governors are and politicians are, I think I would have a better answer. But as I see it, I think that if we didn't have Ukrainians in these occupied territories, I think just to avoid again like millions of people in the army who are going to probably die because it's the war, obviously. So I think it would be possible to concede some territory, but again, the question is why? Because we all know that I think it doesn't stop Putin there. Just because again, it's going to be another safe issue. So I don't think that it's a good idea. But I think as many Ukrainians who just want this war to end as soon as possible. That's why people resort to all these ideas and theories. And yeah, it's just a theory, but we can't really probably influence the decision of I think our military men and the government as well. Just because I'm not a political expert.
Sure.
But again, sometimes you feel like, oh yeah, we would give up land because if there are no Ukrainians and we could stop this war, why not do it? But again, I think it won't end there. So it's just like a safe, and it's like a shortcut. And it just makes you think that it would make things easier, but in reality, probably it won't.
From a point of view of somebody living in England of Ukrainian descent, I would say that unfortunately a lot of people don't trust Putin. We had the Minsk agreements; they were always broken, and all the genocide and things that have happened. Most people here think of Putin as a war criminal, and you cannot negotiate with a war criminal that you can't trust. Okay, so. On a slightly more sort of lighter topic, just generally, what do you think about Volodymyr Zelensky, the current president? Do you think he's doing a good job?
Yeah. Like in a nutshell, I think he's doing great, and we can see that. So the evidence of that is everywhere. I think it's like in the media as well, and because I've spoken to a lot of people from England, and they are quite impressed, and the whole world is kind of impressed by how resilient he is, and I think it's kind of true because just imagine you're like the president of in these circumstances, and just look at all the things that he's done. So he's visited a lot of countries, he's spoken to probably like all people possible, right? And he's a good speaker. He actually makes great speeches, and people whenever we see him on TV, we're so grateful that we have this president because we can feel his support through the screen. And I think it's so important for other people just to realize that, yeah, he is in Ukraine and he is doing everything under the sun that is possible to really like maybe shape people's minds and ask for aid and ask for help, because this is so important. I think that this would be just honestly impossible to even like keep it going to win this war if we didn't have all this support from other countries.
Right.
And that's what he's doing. He's aiming at receiving some help, and I think he's quite good at that.
Okay, so let's just say for whatever reason Zelensky wasn't president anymore. I mean, there are other choices. So let me give you a few choices, and then you let me know which one you would choose.
Okay.
So first of all, we've got, and I'll run through them first before you answer. So first of all, we've got Poroshenko, who was a previous president, and obviously we know that he had lots of good links with the West. He could speak English. People criticized him because of the chocolate factory in Russia. And even though he was being very patriotic, the chocolate factory in Russia was still going and he was still making money. So you've got Poroshenko there. Then you've got Zaluzhny, who was a very, very great army officer and commander, and people love him. Would he make a good president? Who knows? But he's very popular in Ukraine, and a lot of people were upset when the Zelensky changed him to Syrsky to be in charge. Then we've got a guy who's the head of the intelligence, He's very popular. He doesn't talk very much, and I think you know who he is. He's called Budanov, Kirill Budanov,
Yes.
and
Oh,
he's
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
intelligence officer. And he's done a lot of in terms of supporting Ukraine. He's done a lot for Ukraine. And then finally, somebody personally who I'm not a big fan of, but and I don't think actually Zelensky talks to him very much, and that's the boxer Klitschko. So these are all the kind of, in my view, the main contenders for president. If you could choose a new president, who would it be?
So I do I do think that all of them are quite great in what they do. I mean, again, I haven't been following, you know, like them in every step. But also Zaluzhny, I think, would be a great option. But again, I don't know if he has enough expertise in politics. So what he does in his sphere is think you know merits some respect for sure. But also I think Poroshenko, he was all right. A lot of people again say that like probably it's just they don't personally like him sometimes. But probably if you want to find, I don't know, a good president, have a good president, I think you should really just weigh all pros and cons, like you know, all their knowledge and abilities that they have to run the country. So I can't tell. I still love Zelensky, to be honest,
Yes.
because I think that for now, you know, his being in the war with all of us for you know for quite a long time, for over 2 years, to be honest, right? So I think he knows what he's doing in terms of that, and maybe changing the president now, you know, would worsen the matters just because they will need time to like get used to all of that to really adapt
Yeah.
to the new reality. So yeah, for now I think like it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not quite sure who would be like, you know, the
Yeah.
best president for Ukraine. I
Okay.
mean, I know what makes a good president,
Sure.
but out of these candidates, I think yeah, probably
Yeah.
I'll stick
I
with
think
like
I agree with you. I think we just need to stick with Zelensky as long as we can. Continuity obviously is very important. Zelensky, yes, he's very popular. Would he make a good politician? I don't know. Budanov, he's done a lot for Ukraine, but has he got the personality? And these guys, are they good on TV? Because it's so important to be good on social media.
yeah.
I mean, some of these guys, they do fantastic work in the background, but unfortunately, they don't always make good presidents. So that's great. So finally, is there any questions you'd like to ask me? Because it's only fair. I've asked you so many questions. Would you like to ask me a question?
Yeah, definitely. You know, as again, many Ukrainians were quite interested of the image of Ukraine. So we've seen a lot of representations of Ukraine in films and in series, you know, everywhere basically where it's possible. So, but also, what are your thoughts on Ukraine? Either you know, architecture, either people, or the government, or just the culture. So what do you really think of it?
Okay. So first of all, you mentioned architecture, and that was quite interesting because on my last trip to Ukraine, I was sitting on a train and I met this English guy, and I said to him, "What are you doing in Ukraine?" And he said to me, he says, "I'm a retired architect." And what I've done is I've got a few friends who are European architects, and we're all meeting up in Ukraine, in Lviv, and we're going to be helping with the reconstruction of Ukraine. So I keep in touch with him, and he's just released a film about architecture. It's 2 hours long. If you're not interested in architecture, it can be very, very boring. Okay,
Oh,
but
yeah.
he's doing a great job. So that's architecture, and I think it's important to preserve architecture. And it's such a shame that a lot of the buildings are being destroyed because that's part of history. And we used to have these Soviet-style buildings in England that were made in the 1960s, and they were just
Yeah.
square boxes, and they were so ugly and horrible. and we don't want that. We want to
Totally
preserve
agree.
the culture, which obviously involves architecture. Um,
You know what? I have a good point to make here as well. So when we have a walk, just along the streets in Ukraine, as well as my
yeah,
husband, so we have a lot of this like multi-story buildings that are
sure.
grey and ugly, right? And they honestly sometimes I think, wow, it reminds me of North Korea.
Mm,
It's just
yeah.
so grey. It's
Yes, well,
awful.
what my friend Paul said, who's the architect, he says they're designing buildings that are more friendly because you see these big buildings, they're very unfriendly, and they were built like that for a purpose,
Ugh.
so that people wouldn't collectivize together. Because if people started talking together, they might start criticizing the government. They might start wanting to organize a political party or a political group. So this isolationism in building work was done on purpose. So my friend, he says his buildings that he's working with his friends with, they're all buildings that have got sort of like gardens and communal areas so that people can get together. So a lot of these things were done for a reason, and we don't always know what that reason was. In terms of films, there's so many films. A film that I remember, I don't know if you saw it, was the film called Taras Bulba. This
Oh
was
yeah.
a Ukrainian film that was made in Hollywood. And Ukrainian Americans and Canadians got together and they said, we need to make a really good movie, okay? And they had Yul Brynner in it and Tony Curtis. So I remember that film that from my childhood. I also remember a film, it was called Tiny Nezapotych Predkil. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've heard of that. That was
Of course I have. Yeah.
so that's quite a famous film. And then obviously recently a film that's won loads of awards, 30 Days in Mariupol. And I saw that film in Sheffield, and it was what was really, really crazy and amazing was there was a film festival in Sheffield. This movie was shown in Sheffield, and before the movie started, we had a live stream with the director of the film, who was in Ukraine at the time, with bombs going off in the background, saying, "I'm really sorry I can't be with you, but
Oh,
please watch this film. It's so important." And that really blew my mind. I think as Ukrainians living in England, what we've tried to do is preserve the Ukrainian culture. So we are a little bit more, maybe possibly patriotic, nationalistic. Maybe we're too much into Ukraine. Maybe we should
yeah.
sort of calm down a bit. But I think we try and do our best, and obviously we've got people from England out in Ukraine trying to help as much as they can.
I know, but
So
you're contributing to so much, and
yeah,
it won't go unnoticed. So we do appreciate that.
right. So
And it's
so
like
this is
interesting in how, or like British people as well, they are so supportive. It's
yes,
like sometimes because you're really, in this trauma all the time, you're keeping up with the news all the time, and
yeah,
Ukrainians, they sometimes forget maybe to show,
yeah,
all that. But like what you can see around you is just amazing.
sure. Okay, it's been great talking to you. So thanks very much, and this is the end of our interview. Thank you.